أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين.
I mean, Jazakallah khair for that. So welcome everyone to another Micah Nigeria session. Here at Micah Nigeria, our vision is to see Muslims return to the state of Islamic excellence. Some of the programs we deliver include Feeding the Soul, creating a safe space, economic development, leadership and competency, capacity building, encouraging positive social interaction, and promoting a passion for the deen. You can become a member of Micah Nigeria by completing a membership form, which we will share with you in the chat box. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Micah Nigeria Lagos. Here you can find past events and lectures, and it's just a really good platform for you to be able to follow what Micah is doing and catch up on past events. So for more information, please feel free to ask using the chat box, and we will endeavor to get back to you. So we estimate that today's talk will last for about 1 hour, inclusive of Q&A. If we do go over, it wouldn't be for more than 90 minutes in total. We urge you to use the chat box to ask questions throughout the event. As a reminder, the theme for this month is Humanity in Action. And today we have our brother, Sulaimon Arigbabu, who will be talking to us about climate change. And the question is, our climate is changing, are you? So a little bit about Brother Sulaimon. He's a graduate of Lagos State University and a fellow of both Makerere University in Kenya, I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, and the Wageningen University. Please feel free to correct me.
Wageningen.
Wageningen University. Where's that?
Wageningen is a Dutch word.
Wageningen.
Wageningen, yes.
Okay, so we're learning some Dutch today. Wageningen University. Thank you. He has worked in the development sector for 19 years with broad experience across human rights, environmental justice, food security, climate change, youth development, electoral reforms, constitutional reform process, and economic justice issues. He is the designated contact person to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, United Nations ECOSOC, and Green Climate Fund. Brother Sulaimon is currently the Executive Secretary and Head Environment and Sustainable Development Program at Human and Environmental Development Agenda and National Executive Member Southwest Coordinator, Transition Monitoring Group, TMG for short. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Sulaimon. I'm really looking forward to this talk because this is like the 5th event we've had this month on Humanity in Action. And a lot of what we've spoken about has been very much centered on being kind to other human beings. But I think I'm really excited to hear your spin on it and the need for us to be kind to our environment as well, beyond just being kind to human beings. So please feel free to start your talk.
All right, thank you. Jazakumullah khairan for having me. A'udhu billahi samin alim minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I will thank Almighty Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, the master of the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the truth, and is the truth by which all other facts establish their truthfulness or otherwise. Facts as we know them may change from place to place, but they derive their truthfulness from Allah being the truth. Even what we know to be constant The sun will always rise in the east and set in the west. It is a fact. But truthfulness is derived from the fact that Allah makes it so. Should he decide otherwise, then that truth that humanity knows will change. And indeed, if we are to leave our planet and go to other parts of the universe, that truth will not exist. Even the truth about gravity, once we leave the shores of Earth, no longer exists as a truth anymore. So all praises is due to Allah, the truth, the ever-constant truth that is not subjected to space or time. We pray that Allah's choicest blessings will be on the most noble of mankind, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all his companions and his family and all those who have kept the message of truth till this time. I thank the leadership of Micah for conscripting me to do this talk. But alhamdulillah that they were able to get me at a time that I could not run away, because in my style, they know I would normally run. I hope Allah makes this easy for me, and I hope that this short time that I will spend deliberating on this will be beneficial to all of us. My topic is our climate is changing. How are you? It's going to be a short talk on climate justice, importantly, and also on environmental stewardship. These two things covers the ground on both local and global climate discourse and all the issues around sustainable development that we hear about. It is between the two fingers of climate justice and environmental stewardship. Indeed, our climate is changing. We may not notice. Our world itself is changing. And increasingly, we are seeing the might of Allah. We have seen what 2020 has been like for us. He sent just one of his soldiers, an unseen one, so tiny, that if only we could see all the coronavirus, all the COVID-19 virus, even in their trillions, if we could gather them together, humanity would make them disappear. But we can't even see them. They are so small, yet so devastating. And we have seen what it has, the lessons that it has taught our world. Our country is changing. Nigeria has witnessed in this year 2020 things that we would never have imagined, yet they have happened, and we pray that we have learned the best of lessons from this. If we look closely, you realize that even your neighborhoods are changing. Within our families, things are changing, and therefore it makes no sense that we lose the fear of Allah in the pursuit of putting things together in the name of, oh, I want my children to be comfortable, I want this, I want that, and then we go on accumulating. And when those children grow up in our lifetime, we're still around, we're healthy, they leave home and they just simply don't want to come back. Yet, we have violated all the laws of Allah to build mansions, thinking that our children will inherit them. And the moment we are gone, if they are kind enough, they will sell their house. If not, they'll just abandon it, and people who we do not even know will make a mess of what we sweated or cheated to accumulate. So our families is changing. Even we ourselves are changing. Allah says He will continue to send signs to us. He will continue to manifest His signs in the universe and even in our own persons, in our bodies. If only we will take heed, if only we will notice that indeed things are changing. The focus of my talk, because I'm trying my best not to make this a science class, though I have a science background, but I'm not among those who have a good grasp of the science of climate change, because it is indeed a spectrum that is still being understood and explored. So I'm going to make this conversation within the realms of what we all can relate with. I will try and make some of the things I've gleaned from experts, present them in a way that perhaps helps our understanding. So let me do some definition or clarification of terms, if you like. So we say climate change, and often we mix this up. Most people will just think of it as weather. Weather is the most basic of the things we consider in these issues. So weather is it's cloudy now, you think it's going to rain, and then it's changed and it doesn't rain. Or it's very sunny today, and then a week later it rains. Those are weather issues. However, climate issues are changes in observable patterns of weather that we see over a long period of time. Before we can say things have really changed, we are not going to be looking at 5-10 years. Sometimes scientists would observe for up to 30 years and above before we can establish that indeed there's been a shift in the climate pattern of an environment. Another thing we usually mix up with climate change, which is closely related, but may not necessarily mean the same thing, is the concept of global warming. And largely what has been observed in the last 150 to nearly 200 years is that most global warming that has occurred on Earth have been largely induced by the activities of humans. That do not mean that some other things do not occur that exacerbate or increase the global average temperature of the air. But essentially what global warming means is an increase in the global average temperature since recorded history, since recorded taking of temperature pre-industrial period. So it is stated that our Earth average, global average temperature has increased by something in the region of 0.8 degrees Celsius to about 1 degree Celsius. The whole concern for the Earth now is that we are moving towards a 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius increase in global average temperature. You wonder, what does that mean? Even human beings, sometimes you take your temperature, you are like 34.5. At another time, you are like 35.9. Some other times, you are like 36.5. And that does not really have any cause for alarm. Well, when we are talking about this on a global scale, it is indeed something to cause us a lot of sleeplessness. If we go on the trajectory that we are, according to IPC, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the body of scientists who study how our planet is changing, what we are doing to cause it, what will be the likely implication if we follow the same trajectory, and how we can halt things. When we say halt things, climate change is permanent. So when we worry today, we are not worrying necessarily because of the things that are happening now. Those ones we do not have much impact on. We can only learn to adapt. But what we do today will probably have its impact in the next 100 years for the people of the future. And they will equally also be helpless to help themselves. All they might be able to do is just to adapt. So according to this panel, they say that if we continue in the trajectory that we are on and we continue to heat our globe. Before I tell us what they have said, let me explain what heating our globe means. Let me just give one of the slightest examples. So our planet, the planet Earth, is enveloped by a body of gases. Allah has placed these gases there for specific reasons. One is to make the Earth warm enough to accommodate us, to accommodate life. That is why you go to some other part of our universe, of our planetary system, and you cannot see life the way we are having it, either because the temperature is too low or the temperature is too high for life as we understand it. So we are enveloped in a body of gases that allow, we call them the greenhouse gases. They are there so that they can keep us cool enough in the day, warm enough in the night. They can help us to deflect ultraviolet rays of the sun and any other harmful, rays from outer planets. Now, consider when somebody has a fever and you're feeling feverish, you want to put a blanket around that person so that it can reduce the way they are feeling feverish. If you had one blanket and they say, oh, I'm still feeling feverish, then you had 2, then you had 3, then you had 4. You totally envelop them in this huge blanket like 4. Imagine what's going to happen. They are going to start feeling the other way around. And if you don't quickly release them, they might choke to death, they might heat up to death. So it's the same way, the same thing we are doing to our planet. Allah has put a measure of gases around us, the measure that will keep us safe. What we are doing by most of our activities is that we are increasing the number of these greenhouse gases through the things we do that we call anthropogenic activities of man, e.g., our energy system, our food production system, the kind of way we build our homes. Not only do we increase these gases and their heating effects, we also undermine the earth in that we reduce the earth's capability and ability to help reduce the effect of these gases, of this heat, because Allah has made life so easy. So we are all mammals, all animals. Our respiratory system produces carbon dioxide and we take in oxygen. And then we are the fauna. And then on the flora side, as all the plants, their respiratory system takes in carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. So what we are doing as human beings, not only are we increasing the envelope of greenhouse gas around the planet, now we are increasing the number of us as humans and animals that we keep, our cattle, our pigs, our chickens, and us human beings. Imagine the population of the world 100 years ago. The world is not expanding, and imagine how our population has expanded. And on the flip side, we now remove the plants. We take out forests that are the lungs of the earth, the trees in the forest, the greenery on the earth that helps to mop up the greenhouse gases, the carbon that we release from all the things we do. We are removing that as well. So what we then do is that we distort the balance, the equilibrium, for the earth to be able to regulate the greenhouse gases present in our system. So the implication of that is that we are increasing the global temperature of the planet. And what does IPCC then say about this? That in a number of years ahead, coastal cities like Lagos will be gone underwater. And please do not for a second think that, oh, come on. You and I are living witness when the flooding do come. Lagos do go underwater. Because it hasn't come on the scale that we have seen in some other parts of the world, for instance, when you have tsunamis, we might be thinking that, oh, if it happens, I will run to Ikeja. The scale of what we are moving towards, Ikeja, Ijebu, Ondo, Ibadan, will not be an heaven for many of us. Because when water comes at the scale that we are talking about, it will be able to reach all of these places. Now, that is not to mention that there are several other things that's before it gets to that stage that happens to us. So they are saying we are going to see increasing loss of green spaces, green area, forests to deserts. So Nigeria is a front line for desertification, as we are a front line for coastal encroachment, coastal erosion. We are also 11 Nigerian states are experiencing desert encroachment. When this happens, we are going to lose our ability to produce food. We are going to lose many species. We are going to have an increase in tropical diseases. We are going to have the evil triplet of hunger, poverty, and conflicts, because a lot of the conflict we are seeing across the country, I'm not talking about some extreme things that people are doing in the name of banditry or in the name of Boko Haram, but most of these that you heard, herdsmen clash with farmers and all of that, these are resource constrained conflicts. These are conflicts happening because there is a constraint on natural resources that either of these two groups need. The farmer needs the space to plant, because even the herdsman will not keep eating cattle and drinking milk. He also needs carbohydrates. Somebody needs to produce that. And the farmer will also not continue to just eat yam. He also needs pomo, he needs bokoto, he needs milk. Somebody needs to produce that. Before, we used to coexist in a way that there was no constraint on the resource. But now, increasingly, because of the way we are distorting the equilibrium of the earth, we are seeing a lot of conflict because clashes occur between these groups of people, and not just them. It's not just them. It's happening everywhere, and it's not just a Nigerian problem. It is a global problem. So they say we are going to see a lot of this happening. And why is it happening? Because we are increasingly, inadvertently, by the choices we make every day, increasing the global average temperature of our Earth. So climate change, coming back to that, and let me quickly also place on the table that climate change will happen anyway, whether humans have a hand in it or not. It's part of the system of our planet. However, what is happening and alarming is that we, by our actions, are increasing the rates of the climate change happening to us. We are increasing the frequency of extreme weather events that come as a result of climate change. We are increasing also the impact of this extreme event on ourselves. Now, having said this, I will then bring the issue to the issue of climate justice. So I talk about the 4 tragedies for Africa, and by Africa I also mean Nigeria. The first thing is that we are the least responsible for the climate change we are seeing now in the world, the global context. We are the least. Not, mind me, the least doesn't mean we didn't contribute or we are not contributing. Shamefully, we are contributing. But for the effect that we are seeing now, some people did this to our world so that they can become so advanced. They followed, so to speak, a dirty path to development. So they have contributed more, and we are talking about the developed economies of Europe, of America, and parts of Asia. So they are more responsible for the climate change we are having now. That's the first tragedy. So we have least responsibility. The second tragedy is that we are the worst impacted. We are the worst impacted. So when you see the theaters where climate change is wreaking a lot of havoc most, they are part of the world that have contributed least. So when you see places like Bangladesh, Kiribati, parts of Africa, Nigeria, communities have either been lost to ocean erosion or lost to desert encroachment. Many communities, even here in Lagos, there are communities that are disappearing along Lagos coastline. So we are the worst impacted. The third tragedy is that we are the least able to cope or recover from the impact of the climate change we are seeing. Why? Because we do not have systems in place, we do not have infrastructure in place, we do not have proper healthcare system, we do not build houses that can withstand some of the things we are seeing. Our economies are poor. Our food system is not secured, is not sustainable. It makes it so difficult. So when you have a devastation in the UK, for instance, recovery can be planned easily. When you have similar devastation here, we would then be asking for international help. Imagine how many times they experience fire in California or in Australia, but they have systems that help the citizens to come back. Here in Nigeria, when our citizens in 2011, thereabout, yes, when we had the white water, 2012 or 2011, when farmers experienced the flooding that were affected about 26 states in Nigeria, many of the farmers never came back. The federal government 17 billion. Some of them got 500 naira. How would that help? So we are the worst able to come back from the impacts of climate change. Now, the fourth, which I think is the most tragic, is that climate change is not all about gloom and doom. It also presents new opportunities because we need to replan economies, we need to replan our lifestyle, we need to rebuild cities, we need to reinvent things, we need to rework our energy system, we need to do so many things. Unfortunately, Africa, Nigeria, we are not playing in that circle. We are just another dumping ground. We are not taking part of that advantage. We are not part of that business. We are not part of that new knowledge. Those who are creating those new knowledge are tying them down under patent rights. They are tying them down under some, funny things. So we are not even beneficiaries. They are going to drop most of the useless technologies on us while they move on ahead of us again. So this is food for thought for you and I, the young people of Africa, the young people of Nigeria. What are we going to do about this? And don't forget, Allah says that we are vicegerents on earth. We are vicegerents on earth. The meaning of that is that we are his caretaker. When you have a house and you give it to a caretaker or an estate manager, it means you are saddling that person with the responsibility to keep your property in good shape, to service the tenants and all of that for our living here on earth, and so that we can return to him. And Allah will not change the condition of the people unless they change that which is in their hands. So it means that we must be the ones to bring about change. There are global efforts to address climate change. So you have the multilateral process to address climate change through the vehicle of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, where issues, for instance, around the NDC, Nationally Determined Contribution, for all the countries that have signed on after the Paris Agreement, where countries commit. Nigeria, for instance, also committed on 5 points that we are going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions through our agriculture system, our transport system, our energy system, through reducing gas flaring and what have you. However, are we meeting up with this obligation? That's a talk for another day. But I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, that you and I have, we have responsibilities, direct responsibilities. We have 6 motivations, which I will quickly mention. First, we have the motivation because Allah has ordained that we should do this. We should take care of the earth. We should take care of the environment. We should be his vicegerents on earth. Don't forget, our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says we are all shepherds, and we are all going to give account of how we have tended our flock. So our environment is part of our flock. That's our first motivation, and that is the biggest motivation anybody can have to do the right thing. Our second motivation is cultural. Every culture believes that when you take care of the earth will be kind to you. So even the Yoruba culture, the Hausa culture, the Igbo culture, the Chinese culture, the Indian culture, there's an element of your culture that binds you to your land, and not binding you in the sense that, oh, I will die here. No, binding you with a sense of responsibility. I have obligation to make this land good, to keep this environment, to make things happen here. So that's another motivation. I think for every true born is an important motivation. The third motivation is the legal motivation. Every society, every city, every country have their laws that says, oh, you cannot do this. Oh, you can do that. You can't dump your waste here. You pay for waste. In some places, you must separate your waste before you dispose them. There are issues of polluter pay principle. There are so many issues. You don't flare gas, you don't do this. Even in some places, they have laws against plastic bags, which is something I believe our country must consider, because the biggest pollutant in the world today is, after greenhouse gas emission through our transport and whatever system is pollution through plastic bottles and plastic bags. So there are laws in many places, banning some of it. So there is a legal obligation for it. If you are a company, there are environmental standards to maintain. So these are motivations for you. Then the third is the social responsibility. It doesn't matter whether you are from this land or not. You live here, whether as a corporate entity or as a private person, you have a sense, if you're a responsible person, you have a sense of being obligated to take care of beyond even what the law demands. So if you are going on the road and you see something that should not be there and you take it up as Islam enjoins us, that is being socially responsible. You don't know who is going to be affected. It's not as if, oh, you are sure that it's my daughter or my son that's going to be affected by this. You're just doing that for humanity. That is being socially responsible. So you are a company, haven't paid your tax, haven't maintained environmental standards. You then decide that, oh, let's plant some trees. Oh, let's help people to have access to water, or let's help people to have access to cooking energy so that they don't cut down the forest on a corporate social responsibility basis, at your personal level. This is being socially responsible. And that is good motivation for anybody. Informed self-interest. If you are somebody who do not believe in God, alhamdulillah, I believe I'm talking with Muslims and we believe in Allah, and we would have found our anchor in the four things that I have established. But if that is not enough for you, how about informed self-interest? Knowing that if you keep the drains around your house clear, you are likely to suffer less attack of mosquito and less likely to fall sick with malaria. How about that as a reason for taking care of your environment? How about you not wanting to see flooding, and because of that you clear your drains? How about the fact that, it's true that climate change, the impact of climate change is global, but look, every global impact first starts with a local impact. So if you cut the trees on your street, if you, in any completely built up street, if you have just one plot of land where it's not yet built up and they have trees, or it's even built, but they have trees there, that place, everybody passing on that street, when you get there, something will feel different about that place. So we all know that it is good, for instance, that we should plant trees. We all know that it is good that we keep our water clean. We all know that it's good that we do not dump waste in. So how about this self-interest? How about knowing that this thing is going to be good for me if I do it? How about knowing that it will keep me healthy? It will help my economy. If you are in a place and you have staff, you want to take care of the environment so that you don't have loss of man-hour because your staff fall ill and what have you. So how about that? That should be enough motivation for any right-thinking person to want to take responsibility for the environment, to want to take responsibility to make sure that we had our own little, to helping the earth to heal, to helping the earth to regulate itself, to helping the earth to regain its equilibrium, its ability to take care of the mess we are making. Because like I said, don't forget, not only are we making more mess, but by destroying the forest, for instance, by indiscriminately clearing land for agriculture, by building indiscriminate unplanned urbanization, we are equally reducing the earth's ability to help regulate and clean up the mess we made after us. So, and the last of the 6 motivation that anybody should have, how about the opportunities? How about the opportunities in keeping your environment good? How about you seeing an advantage where other people are making a mess, you are turning their mess around to resources, to assets? How about the opportunity to make a difference, to make money, to create wealth, to create employment, to change your fortune? And people are doing this every day just by paying extra attention to the environment, taking off other people's mess and converting this to opportunity. Whether you're talking about plastic, whether you're talking about metals, whether you're talking about waste food, how about you? A whole lot is happening in this sector. We will need another session to talk about opportunities that are there for you and for me to make a new life, to impact our personal economy and the economy of our cities. When we're talking about addressing environmental issues, addressing climate change. So in rounding up, because I've been asked to speak for 30 minutes and I think I've shot through that a little bit. In rounding up is to say that indeed we have enough motivation, to want to take care of our environment if we think through it. We have enough motivation, and some of the things that we can do are part of what I've mentioned in the motivations that I've listed. However, the reality for us is that unfortunately, Africa, most of us would like to get out of the continent, and we might end up either being sent back or we overcrowd those parts of the world that we are running to or run them into a mess as well. So the safest haven for the world, actually talking scientifically now, the safest haven for the planet is Africa, because we still have the largest reserve of forests. In spite and despite the Amazon, Africa still have the largest reserve of natural forest. We might seem to be living primitively, but I tell you that primitive is what the world seems to want to return to. So all of our technologies now, we are now looking for ways to make things as simple and as undisruptive to the environment as possible. So how about that for a motivation for you and me to take responsibility as vicegerents of Allah to ensure climate justice, to deliver on our environmental stewardship as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained us, and as common sense has also dictated. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for that, Brother Sulaiman. So thank you firstly as well for sticking to time. I just wanted to say, if there's anything that you want to add that you feel like you couldn't cover in that short space of time, you can have 10 more minutes if that's something you'd be interested in.
Okay. Thank you for your generosity. There are a couple of things that I would like to quickly add.
Okay.
Just a minute, please. I'm going through my notes here. Okay, so let me talk a little more about the multilateral efforts at addressing climate change, why they are important, but why we cannot wait for them. So there are multilateral efforts, of course, like we say, the UN has been shouting it. You know that a major determinant of the latest United States election is climate change. So one candidate is a climate denial, climate skeptic, while the other is a climate activist. So the issues of climate change is, of course, taken seriously at the global level. I dare say, and even for the last 13, 14 years, observed and participated in many of the global discourse around climate change. At the end of the day, those who have the power, the political power to act, are not as in a hurry as those who are advocating. So you can see, indeed, most of the advocacy for action, demand for action, the climate protest activism is happening in the West. But equally, those who have the power, the global big brands, the big polluters, the Americas, now China, of course, as well, and the rest of them, Europe, they are not as eager to make this decision because a tough decision is going to mean a lot of change. They don't want these decisions to be abrupt. However, the health cannot wait. So that is why it's also important that you and I know that we cannot wait on the international system to sort it. At these conferences, they dictate, they argue over clauses for days. And sometimes the conferences will spill over. And even when they reach decisions, somebody can come and say, I'm not bounded by this decision, like we saw President Trump did, pulling out of the Paris Agreement. And we keep doing this yo-yo. So it means that we cannot rely entirely on the international system to solve the problem, even though we must keep applying pressure on them. It is important that we take local actions. And in taking those local action, we are also having the problem that in Nigeria, those who have the political power to act are unable to act because they are thinking about economy. So Nigeria is thinking about, we are a fossil fuel, we are an hydrocarbon-based economy. So the fossil fuel that we trade in is going to form largely a background for any decision that Nigeria is making. We can't take any drastic action. Yet the impact, those who live in the Niger Delta, for instance, if you have gone to the areas where exploration occurs, you will have pity for people around there. Their livelihoods, their environment is destroyed every day. And the money is probably, even those amongst their people who are making the money from this are not developing the local environment, they are going elsewhere. So it requires that we have a total paradigm shift, a total change in our thinking, a total change in the way we perceive the world, in the way we feel empathy for others. That is what will make us because we need the voices calling for change in terms of how we relate with our environment, in terms of issue of environmental justice, climate justice. We need the voices to actually be louder in this part of the world. We do not shout about these things, yet we are worse impacted by them. So it's important that not only do we start, our action should start from deep self. You, the human being, you are a shepherd unto yourself. You are going to give account of yourself. So be good to yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of your health. Take care of your immediate environment that will impact on your health, your mental health, your physical health, your environmental health. When you do that, go to the level of family. Let families come together and see what little they can do. So my children, my family, we feed birds. We stock bird food the way we stock our own food. But in the course of feeding pigeons, we realized that other species of bird were coming and we were wondering how could we feed them. And then one day we threw some leftover food, and then we saw some other species, including kites and what have you, came to eat. And since then, no grain or morsel of food has wasted in our house. If it is leftover spag, moi moi, akara, bread, meat, whatever it is, there is a species of bird that's coming to feed on them. And we have a place where we feed them. You can do as little as having a small garden. You can do as little as putting water out for birds. You can do as little as, you remember the woman we heard of in the Sirah who was kind to a thirsty dog, and Allah promised her al-Jannah for that sake. So in our own best interest, we should act. Beyond that, these things we do, nature itself provide ecosystem services for us. So I show my children sometime where we feed birds. We have it's a small roof somewhere at the back of our house. And some other houses have the same roof. And those roofs are, dirty, blackish, and what have you, because nobody used them. People do other things in their own. No, I'm not talking about what they do or not. But they don't use those roofs at the BQ at the back of their houses. But because we do, that roof is always very, very clean. You don't see grasses growing on it. It's good to be, and that is just the most basic of ecosystem services we are getting. If we take care of our environment, issues of diseases, issues of whatever it is, the health has a solution for every problem that humanity has. Unfortunately, because we are reducing in our duty as vicegerents, we're also missing out. Many of the species that are there to take care of us, and when we have ailments that will take care of, they are going into extinction. So we have an obligation to do right by ourselves, by our God and by our environment. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for that. So I'll just jump straight into the Q&A. So we have a question here. Well, it's an observation. No, it's a comment and a question. So the international community can only do so much. A lot of change, I believe, would have to come from the local communities. But how do local communities make an effort to make things better when they are not aware that these changes are going to affect us and our children?
Yeah, I agree with the comments, and of course, yes, the slant of the question. There is poor, insufficient awareness. The awareness is not as bad as it was some 20 years ago when we started discussing these issues, because some other people were discussing it before we came. So I know of a BBC World Service Trust report done around 2007, where the survey showed that less than 1% of the Nigerian population have any incline as to what climate change meant. But I'm sure a lot has changed. And why did this change so fast? Not because we did enough effort to educate ourselves, but because nature itself came to teach us. So we have witnessed some crazy, devastating flooding. We have witnessed, let me give you the latest that we witnessed, which many people do not pay attention to. So the cost of onions, I'm sure if you take about half a dozen good-sized onions and gift somebody now, you'll be in their good books for a while. Now, so what suddenly happened to onions? Why come we can't find it anymore? Two things happened that we didn't pay attention. The first is that there was this devastating flooding in the north that happened, which we were not prepared for, and it happened anyway, and it really disrupted agriculture, especially planting of vegetables. Then, every year, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency's name they produce what we call the seasonal rainfall prediction for every year, and they released that of 2020 in January. And we tried to do some dissemination around that. And part of what they said was that there's going to be a dry spell where the rainfall will cease. It happens every year. We don't take notice. Unfortunately, this year it took longer period. So the implication of that, and unfortunately, our agriculture in this part of the world is largely rain-fed. We have not developed irrigation infrastructure to support our agriculture. That's why our agriculture is seasonal. We don't do across season planting. We wait for when the rain comes, and that's why you find the people from the north, they go home. So that's why you have so many seasonal unemployed people. We have not developed irrigation infrastructure. So unfortunately, the rains did not come when we are expecting them to come back, and the farmers could not plant. And then the issue of banditry, where farmers are being kidnapped, on their farms, equally debarred farmers from growing the things. So and this is not going to be the only things we are going to see. There are so many things that are already ripe in the farms now, but farmers are afraid. See what happened yesterday. 43 farmers beheaded by Boko Haram in Borno, rice farmers. We are going to feel their impact. So the actions, our awareness of these things, unfortunately, we are learning the hard way. And we can do better. We can learn from other people's experience, from wisdom of experts. But we are learning as the thing happens to us. Unfortunately, we feel so helpless to act. And that is what we should not. Everybody must see themselves as having a responsibility to do something. Even if your responsibility is to tell the next person about these things, you must take that as a duty. That's very important.
Thank you very much for that answer. I hope that's answered your question to the person who posed it. Another one is, kindly share an anecdote of communities that are now suffering from the consequences of not being environmentally responsible.
You mean communities that are already impacted by our environmental indiscretion?
Correct.
Of course, indeed, there are quite many communities. even in Nigeria, in Lagos. So I just mentioned, for instance, the things we are seeing up north, desert encroachment, where we are losing the size of a football field every day in climate change. We have coastal communities across the world, whether you talk Bangladesh, whether you talk about the island near southern part of Africa. There are parts of the world that are already facing threat of extinction, or even communities that have gone under. And the prediction, of course, for those of us that are still on the surface, is that in less than 50 years, because the prediction about 50 years is already about 10 years, I see in less than 50 years, some of the coastal cities will no longer be as we know them, would either have gone under. And please don't let us, Allah also says that you travel the land and see the relics of civilization. Civilizations probably greater than what we are experiencing. You know, have either gone underwater or have gone under sand, have come to ruins. And unfortunately, you know, it says to us that corruption has manifested on the land and on the ocean because of the evil that the hands of man wrought on ourselves. So either the evil of indiscretion in relating with our environment, or the evil of corruption, of oppressing one another, these things do bring perdition, destruction to civilization. And one can only pray that that will not be where we end up, but that is the trajectory that we are on, as it were. So indeed, yes, there are communities that are either on the front line now, or some that are even have gone under. And if the person wants to have specific lists, person can have my email and I will share some materials with you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So can we take your email address now, or maybe towards the end of the event, if you type in the chat box, so if anyone...
I can just type it now in the chat box.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
If you permit me, I can just type it.
I'll let you do that, and then there are a couple more questions.
Okay.
We'll probably be able to take maybe one or two more. Maybe one.
Okay, so that's my email address.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Right, so a really interesting question here is, on an individual level, what practical things can we start doing to prepare for climate change? Very interesting.
Okay, so I made some allusion to this. First is to understand our role in the system. And our role as Muslims, as human beings, is that we are Allah's vicegerents on earth. Our role also is that we are shepherds who have an accounting to do of our flock. And our flock, of course, will include ourselves. Do we even care to know about the source of the things that we eat? We are usually bothered about the cost of foodstuff going up. But have we given a thought to that man, that woman on the field that makes that food happen? I've lived a time in my life where I come to realize that it doesn't matter if you had $1 million in your pocket. If you did not stop at the grocery, you will go to bed hungry. So we bother just about our money, but if we gave a thought to those who make these things happen, and they are the ones who get the least benefit. They even don't have commensurate benefit for the sweat they put into producing our food. As individual level, we need to make deliberate choice to cut down our waste, reduce, use, take cool. You can never get tired of those R's. Reduce personally. Don't take that plastic bag if you don't really have to. Don't take it. If you can just hold the thing in your hand or put it in your car, you don't. It's not that, oh, I've paid for it. No. That's why in some other climes, in some other part of the world, if you go to the store without your bag, you have to pay to get another bag. You know, so we need to reduce the waste we generate, reduce the things we eat, reduce. Each time you want to waste food, remember that there's a family who will do anything to have that thing that you want to throw away. So we need to reduce our waste. We need to reuse. So if you have one bag, take it to the market severally. If you have bottles, you can use them, just delay their going to the landfill. And if possible, upcycle. Make sure they don't go to the landfill. Use them to do other things. Use them to do decorations. Use them to plant flowers, to plant vegetables. Just find a way not to burden the earth. Each plastic that we throw out there takes thousands of years to disintegrate because they are non-biodegradable. And then recycle. That's where opportunity is. Individuals, governments, societies, Muslim organizations, we need to help our young people. Let them help us to get rid of the plastics, to get rid of the waste. Let us give them something in return that help them to change the paradigm, the way they see these things as not waste, but resources. Because the things we consider as waste, you go to other places and you see what people are doing with them, whether in terms of arts, in terms of making use of them for other things, you'll be amazed. So let us help our kids to see things not as waste, but as resources. That is the most important responsibility we have as individuals, as families. Then when we now do that, when we start to be responsible in our own private spaces, then we can start to think of what we do as a community, what we do as an ummah, as an association. So if, for instance, Micah, the way Micah started, some young people started the idea of donating blood, helping with blood. That's beautiful. That's awesome. We can also start such initiative for the environment. We can have deliberate cleanup days. We can have tree planting days. We can have days to go and educate people. Let us take individual and communal responsibilities. And then finally, where we have the least power is in the political space. But we have the voice. Let us be part of the advocates to demand that our duty bearers deliver on their obligations when it comes to environmental justice, when it comes to environmental stewardship, when it comes to making the earth a better place.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Sulaiman. I
Amen.
was actually going to ask you this question, but sister has asked, does anyone know of any Islam-based volunteer organizations dedicated to climate change? I'd like to add as well, if you know of any that are not necessarily Islam-based, but just generally dedicated to climate change.
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say about that is that why don't you just start one? It's one of the easiest things to do. Just start once, just start an initiative. It doesn't have to be registered. Get a couple of friends together and say, let's do this. And then you can put an Islamic face to it. That would be lovely. That would be beautiful. And then you can ask other people to join, whether they are Muslims or not. Yeah, but yes, there are organizations that, if you mean in Nigeria, that are Islamic, they probably do exist. And I've seen quite a number of, I've gone to a number of Muslim organizations to give talk. So perhaps in terms of enlightenment, I know that a number of our I know, for instance, as Saudi youth also have these activities they do annually. But I think we can do a lot more. Either we are operating within the Ummah or we are operating in the secular space. Let us, especially for our sisters, you know that once you come around, it's so obvious that the Muslims are here, alhamdulillah. So that gives the feel that, okay, this is something that, because we have more obligation, you know, to take care of the health than other people who are doing so. So I can look up. I know that there are organizations outside of here. For instance, in places like the UK, like Malaysia, you have the Scouts, where Muslims especially in Malaysia, you see their scouts, they are Muslim children, and they are doing things. So we need such things for our kids. And we need, but more importantly, like I said, let's all go start something good. Let's start something good. It can be an initiative that reoccurs, or it can be just a one-off. You see a particular place that really, really needs attention. You can gather people on the Saturday, a couple of friends, call on me and myself. If it's outside of Lagos, shall you pay for my transport? Outside of that, I would like to join you. You're doing something in your neighborhood as an initiative. Yeah, I would like to join you to, do something good. So I think this is something that we Muslims need to do a lot more of. And I can look at organizations, in some of the Muslim countries, for instance, these are even national level actions. So you go to Doha, there's a Quran Park in Doha where they have all of the plants mentioned in the Quran. They have a garden where they are bringing back all of those plants. I mean, that's something beautiful. So they have foundations around that. You go to Dubai and the rest of it. So you see that at national level they are doing things. That is just to say to us that we also can either start something here or encourage our government to do a lot more, because we have parks here. But our laws are the least respected in the world, unfortunately. So even when you say people should not cut trees, the government will be the first to fell a tree there. And I'm not doing that to say something dandy. I'm talking about that from experience, So let's go start something good, and we'll all be happy to join you, inshallah.
Inshallah. So I believe this is from the sister. So please send him an email if you'd be interested in starting something. And yeah, please share with Micah. It'd be really interesting to see how far we get with this conversation we've just had. Jazakallah khair, Brother Sulaiman. Thank you so much for shedding light on such an important topic. I pray that Allah continues to increase you in knowledge and blesses all the work you do and accepts it from you as an act of ibadah. Thank you for honoring our invite and actually coming out here today to speak with us. Could I also ask you to make dua for us too, please, and our members and our attendees today?
MashaAllah, alhamdulillah. First, I would please request everybody to make dua for those Muslims who were killed yesterday in their farm in Borno, in Maiduguri. That Allah will grant them respite, will forgive them, and grant respite to their families. And by extension, we pray for our country, that Allah will heal all our wounds, guide our leaders to do justice, and return peace and justice to our land. I also pray that everywhere that the Muslims are facing oppression in the world, that Allah will grant us respite. And where the oppression of Muslims is Muslims, may Allah touch the hearts of the oppressors to do justice. To Micah, I say Jazakumullahu khairan for inviting me, and I pray that Allah continue to keep the organization, that it continues to fulfill its purpose, that is striving in the cause of Allah. To the current leadership and all the crop of new leaders who are keeping the flag flying, I will say to you the way the Quran says, Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin. May you end in praise. May the aftermath of your effort in this dunya earn you praise and appreciation from your Lord. And to all of us who are struggling in spite and despite, to keep the faith, to keep sanity, to do right by ourselves, by our family, by our community, by our environment. May Allah sustain us and not put us to shame. Rabbana hab lana min azwajina wa zurriyatina qurrata a'yuni waj'alna lil muttaqina imaman. Rabbana afrigh alayna sabran wa thabbit aqdamana wansurna 'ala al-qawmi al-kafirin. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون Wassalamu ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Sallu ala nabiyil kareem.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for that, Brother Sulaiman.
Amin wa yakum. Amin wa
And
yakum.
to all
Thank
our
you. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem, sir. Thank you for honoring the invite. Thank you to everyone for joining us for today's event. Jazakallah khair for giving up your time. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this knowledge beneficial for all of us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.